You could draft him as a flyer, and then all of a sudden they have him starting at fucking quarterback. You plug him in your wide receiver. It's fucking all set. And like, how do you not see that, Walsh? It's perfect.
You cracked the code, dude. You figured it out. Mohamed Sanu, New England Patriots starting quarterback.
Total lock.
You're listening to Let's Talk Fantasy Football, where men of fantasy genius have realized, hey guys, we don't need real football skills to dominate on the fantasy field. Yeah! So slap on your pads and grab your helmet. Shit's about to get real.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I'm your host tonight. My name is Nick Walsh, and I am here with my good friend Vinny Gonzalez. Vinny, how are we doing?
Doing good, man. Ready to start the fucking season. I loved how you were like, it's like podcast season now. And I was like, nah, we got a couple more weeks. You're like, nope, we start division previews now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I figured schedule-wise, if we get all the divisions out, now, then we've got the whole month of August to go through draft strategy and, news and ADP changes and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to get through these division previews as over the next 8 weeks or so. So keep an eye out for all of that. And we're going to start today with the AFC East. So this is going to be part one of that. It's good to be back. We had those couple pandemic podcasts where we just got shit-faced. But I mean, because normally we pretty much run from June to the end of the year. So here we are. It's June. We're back again. Hopefully everyone is doing well, and hopefully this lets you start diving into some football. But we're going to start with the Bills and the Jets today. So Patriots and Dolphins will be next week. Before we jump into the Bills, Vin, you got anything you trying to get off your chest, or are you good?
No, I'm good.
All right, sweet.
I like to internalize everything, so I'm fine.
Yeah. All right. Wonderful. I am also internalizing a million things. But let's just jump right in with the Bills. So the Bills, I think, are a really, really interesting team in that they are not the current betting favorite to win the division, but I think the Bills should win this division this year. With Tom Brady obviously out of New England, the betting market remains very respectful of Bill Belichick, like wildly respectful, to the tune of them having a half-game win total, expected or, over-under for the win total. Then better than the Bills do. The Bills currently have a 9-game win total for 2020. What do you think about that? Do you think the Bills should win this division, or are you still with the Patriots? Or are you just like a random Dolphins lover or some bullshit like that?
No. I mean, not on the Dolphins. We'll get to that. But I don't know. That's a very Vegas move because it gets people to bet on both things. Like, no one's going to doubt the Patriots. And then also you got to take some action on the Bills as dogs because they just went to the fucking playoffs for the first time second time in a couple of years. But the way they got there was impressive, and they just had such a weird, good season. And it would be very strange if they were not, if we're making the odds, of course we're going to pick them as the favorite. But when you're looking at it on paper, they should be easily, like we said, the favorite. But again, the Bill Belichick mystique is definitely still fucking around. And it's fucking with my head when I was looking at the Patriots. Because you don't know what to think of them at all. But you just look at them and what they have, just like, Bill could probably make this work. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I maintain that the Patriots are going to fucking suck this year, I think. I mean, their defense –
You're going, full in on that.
Yeah, I think so. But we'll save that for later on. Okay. Sorry. I'm putting the cart ahead of the horse. Is that how this – yeah, that's how the saying goes. Anyway, let's get back to the Bills. So the Bills, to me, this year – they really have built the team in a way where, going into his third year, this is sort of a make or break year for Josh Allen. They've kept the same head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. There's a lot of continuation on this team where they haven't really lost too much that was important, but they have added some key pieces. And I think now, with the additions of Stephon Diggs, with the addition of Zach Moss, the running back from Utah, the Bills have a pretty complete offense and a lot of weapons for Josh Allen to use. So now he's just got to use it. Now, this is the point where if Josh Allen doesn't take a step forward and really become a solid NFL quarterback this year, they might start thinking that their franchise needs to go a different direction. For fantasy purposes, Josh Allen's currently sitting at quarterback 7, 77th overall. I love Josh Allen, but that seems a little high to me. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, he's one of those quarterbacks that really keeps it afloat with his rushing stats. If he can clean up like the dumbass mistakes he makes, like throwing backwards passes when you're trying to win a playoff game, or just those random stupid picks that he always throws, he really should be able to make that leap like you alluded to as the franchise quarterback for the Bills. But it's tough to say if I like him that much. I do like the rushing floor, and that is probably the most appealing thing about Josh Allen. And then I think his spot is due to it's dumb, but the addition of course it is, of a Stephon Diggs, because you think that he's just going to have a better outlet to pass to. And the weapons they have are stacked. Cole Beasley, John Brown, and Diggs, that's like an elite trio.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they do really have one of the best, like in the NFL in 2020, 3 wide receivers is more or less the starting lineup. And if you look like top to bottom and just like the roles they all play, Diggs, Brown, and Beasley is clearly one of the best in the NFL in that regard. Just, you've got your slot specialist. You've got 2 guys. John Brown is known as a deep threat, and I think last year he showed he can run those intermediate routes. He can kind of operate at multiple levels of the field in a way that we haven't really seen before. And Diggs is kind of a guy who's known as an intermediate route guy, like a great route runner, that sort of thing. But Diggs last year, and this is something wild that I'm not sure that everyone really realizes, that Diggs for the Vikings last year was used in the John Brown deep threat role. His average depth of target was 14.9 yards, and John Brown's last year was 14.6. So Diggs was actually used as more of a deep threat in that Vikings offense last year than John Brown was in the Bills offense. Now, I think the Bills are going to try and transition him back to sort of that intermediate route, just take advantage of his skill at running routes and setting guys up to really use him to his full advantage. But I'm interested in how they use Diggs, because he showed he can do a lot of things last year and be used in a way, and not that he liked it, he was pissed off the whole year about it. So we'll see. But yeah, so we've got Diggs here going wide receiver 23, 59th overall, and then John Brown, wide receiver 41, 108th overall. Cole Beasley, wide receiver 71, 215th overall. For Diggs, I feel like the value is kind of right. I think the other 2 are like wildly undervalued at this point in the offseason. I don't know. What are your opinions on that?
Yeah, I think the Diggs stuff is dead on. The only thing, I love John Brown. I like Cole Beasley. My only problem is when you have these guys, when do you use them? It's going to be really hard to gauge. Like Cole Beasley, I could never figure out. John Brown, at least you have that upside of catching a huge bomb. But when you have a guy like Cole Beasley and you're flexing him or something like that, you're really banking on either a lot of catches or a random 2-touchdown game. So the value is definitely there super late. Obviously, he's basically going free right now and probably will, towards the end of the season, since he's the 3rd option on the team. But with a guy like John Brown where he's falling in the middle, I think that's where I'm the most confused, because John Brown can definitely do it all, and him and Stephon Diggs are very similar, like you were saying, but I think it's going to be very hard to dictate when you want to play a guy like John Brown in your starting lineup. Okay,
that's fair. I just know if John Brown stays at the 108th pick, so you're getting him in, somewhere from the 8th to 10th round, depending on the size of your league. I am going to own so much fucking John Brown this year, as I did last year, but
yeah, it's just going to be frustrating,
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see how it all goes. But yeah, Josh Allen really, really is set up with those weapons. So let's talk a little bit about Dawson Knox, who's the second-year tight end now. He's currently tight end 29, picked 235 overall. So not really on the redraft radar. Do you think he should be?
I'm going into this year firmly on the I don't give a rat's fuck about any tight end. So I'm really having a tough time trying to figure out even who should be drafted at all, like as a top 10. So if you want to take Dawson Knox, go ahead and take Dawson Knox. I'm not going to have many strong opinions on any tight ends this year.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair way to look at it. I mean, it's not like the tight end position overall has a ton for these Bills. You have Knox, and then you have Tyler Croft behind him, as well as Lee Smith and Tommy Sweeney, who I always like to bring up because one of my good friends' names is Tommy Sweeney. But yeah, it's not that he's going to mean anything, but I don't have any strong opinions on Knox. I think he could take some steps forward going into his second year. Behind going back to those wide receivers, behind them they have Duke Williams, Isaiah McKenzie. They drafted Gabriel Davis and Isaiah Hodgins. I don't really have any opinions on these guys, and I don't think we need to, right?
Yeah, probably not. Question for you, Walsh. Would you rather take Dawson Knox, or would you rather take a guy we'll talk about in the other podcast, and Mike Gesicki?
Definitely Gesicki.
Okay.
I think Gesicki showed that. He's a guy who had a really solid end to the year last year, and I like that momentum going into this year. We'll talk about some of the drawbacks or some of the disadvantages of Gesicki when we get to that part. But yeah, I would definitely rather have Gesicki, I think.
Right, and he's not even being drafted as a top 10 tight end, even like remotely close, right?
Gesicki?
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, he's tight end 14 right now.
Okay,
yeah.
So he's in the top 15, but like even that is a stretch for most leagues, like where you take one tight end per team, basically. And then, I don't know, I think it's just a stretch to like include Dawson Knox in anything, unless you really get down.
Yeah, I mean, to bring up another guy that we're gonna talk about later in this specific podcast. I would rather take a shot on Chris Herndon of the Jets than I would on Dawson Knox.
That would have been a better question. I'm stupid.
It's all right. We're easing back into the season, baby. So we're doing all right there. Let's talk about the running backs. Frank Gore, no longer a Buffalo Bill. You do have Devin Singletary, who is, will be the lead back, you would assume. Singletary was on the field a ton last year, was really good in pass protection, was really good in the pass game itself. Let me see, how many targets did we have for Devin Singletary last year? 41 targets. So not like a huge amount, but pretty good, and something that you obviously think he can build on this year. So the wrench that kind of got thrown into the Devin Singletary value was the draft pick of Zach Moss, who was the 22nd pick in the third round, and is likely to take away some of that work from Singletary. So, I think Singletary will be the RB1 in this offense. I still think he's a guy who, you have in maybe that second or third, tier of starting running backs where he's not going to be a feature back, but he should get the majority of snaps. I don't know. I think I'm pretty bullish on him. He's currently RB21, pick 44 overall. I haven't obviously gone through and ranked everyone, but I think I might like him better than RB21.
You see, where would that necessarily be going round-wise?
So in the fourth round, basically. Okay,
so that's kind of like when you're not super pumped about taking him at that time, but it could totally just be fine or work to, excess, especially the fact that we expect this offense to be better as a whole. That gives more opportunities to Devin Singletary, who you said saw, a ton of the field last year when he was healthy, after he missed those 3 games after kind of, he came out pretty hot and had a decent, fantasy-wise, first 2 weeks and then got injured. People kind of forgot about him. And then once he came back, if you held on to him, he was pretty good. So I think there's definitely that opportunity stake in that, especially if we're thinking that the Bills are going to be even more solid than they were last year with a pretty good playoff team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's going to wind up being a good pick, and ADPs are obviously a little hairy at the current given time, and certainly aren't going to be what they are, when it comes to your draft in August. But yeah, I think overall, both of us are pretty in on Singletary. Even in that timeshare last year, he got 150 carries and, like I said, those 41 targets. So that's not bad, And Frank Gore's departure leaves a total of 166 carries, up for grabs. if you ask me, is 200 carries for Singletary realistic? 200 carries, 50 plus targets? Like, fuck yeah, absolutely. I would even maybe go up to 60, 70 targets, which that's good.
That's very good.
Dude, he played 12 games last year and got 41 targets. Like, if we extrapolate that out, we're not that far off. And then we're also taking into account the fact that he's a second-year player who should gain some more responsibility. So, yeah, I'm pretty in on Devin Singletary, I think, and I think I'm a little bit above market on him currently.
Yeah, I think so. I think we got our first love of the offseason.
There we go. So we got to do we got to do it. Yeah, no, we do got to talk about Zach Moss as well, and what his value is going to look like. At the current time, he's going as RB 55, 179th overall. There's been talk that Zach Moss might take away some goal line work from Singletary and some red zone work, which is fine. He might be a guy who's usable in that way. But also, like, Josh Allen's just going to run some shit in too, So I don't even know if that makes him that valuable. To me,
so like I was going to say, you're not taking Devin Singletary for his enormous touchdown upside. You're taking his opportunity upside. So like you said, the Bills usually get down there. Josh Allen is doing whatever the fuck he wants. Like, that dude is a psychopath jumping over the line, had so many rushing touchdowns. I think he had 9. So, it's not like you want to have the bruiser like on your team necessarily. It's fantasy team.
Yeah, I mean, rushing touchdowns last year for the Bills, like you said, Josh Allen 9, Devin Singletary 2, Frank Gore 2. So, like, Josh Allen is the goal line back now.
Be real about it.
Yeah, so I guess with that being said, do you want to draft Zach Moss at all? Or are you cool with just, like, kind of leaving him on letting someone else pick him up late?
Yeah, someone else could take it. I mean, and then when I start thinking about it, I get all paranoid that, like, oh, he's probably the heir apparent if anything were happening to Singletary injury-wise, but you're not really going to plan for that, especially if you're targeting someone like Singletary, you're not going to take a weird-ass goal line back rookie handcuff. So best not to get into that, like, muddy-ass situation and just kind of, if you want part of this backfield, take Devin Singletary and don't really kind of, like, nip at the heels of, like, late in the draft and get Zach Moss.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And also to back that point up, and just because Don would be mad at us if we didn't bring up his name, if Devin Singletary were to get hurt, TJ Yeldon, TJ Tasty will get a little bit of a role, I would think, in the pass catching game. So there you go, Don. I hope you're listening. I hope you enjoyed the TJ Tasty shout out. He's not going to do jack shit unless Devin Singletary gets hurt, but there you go.
He was bad last year too.
Yeah, he wasn't good. Like,
limited use and, like, very poor play.
Well, that's good old TJ Yeldon for you. All right, I think that should basically do it for the Bills offense. Just to give, like, a full view of the team. I don't really think their offensive line is going to be much better or worse than it was last year. It was kind of a middle-of-the-pack offensive line, so that's why we didn't really bring it up. And I also think on defense, because the Bills were a pretty solid defensive team last year. They were 6th overall in Football Outsiders DVOA. They had a couple of big losses on the defensive line in Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson, but then they also signed Mario Addison from Carolina, who's a very good pass rusher, and they drafted AJ Epinesa, who is also a pass rusher out of Iowa. So I think all of that is basically to say, I think their defense, you can, obviously there's a lot of variation in defense, but I think you can expect it to be a top third of the league defense again, pretty handily, which is another reason that I like the Bills to win this division this year.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. And then, the departure of Tom Brady helps a lot. Like, the Patriots right now are an enigma. We don't really know what they are. So you can, they're playing them twice a year. They get the Jets twice. That's, middle of the pack. And then Dolphins with possibly Fitz or, Tua. So they get some advantageous matchups in the division. So it's not a bad defense to snag.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that division and, like, 4-2 is, like, the absolute worst that they should go in that division. Obviously weird shit can happen, but
agreed.
They shouldn't be 500 or worse in that division.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to. Oh wait, no, let's take a quick break, I guess, and then we'll be right back with the New York Jets.
You're listening to Let's Talk Fantasy Football, home of the brutally honest fantasy advice you've always needed.
All right, guys, we are back and we are ready to dive headfirst into the shallow concrete pool that is the New York Jets and break our necks. All right, Vin. So with the Jets, we do have the coaching staff again staying the same. We've got Adam Gase back at head coach. Questionable.
Mind blowing. Absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah, and then Dow Loggins as the offensive coordinator, and Greg Williams also a little bit mind blowing to me, still back as the defensive coordinator. They went 7-9 last year. The over/under for their wins this year is 7. So we're not really expecting much change based on that. They did do some interesting things, I guess, over the offseason. But I mean, the story of the Jets and the story of the Jets in fantasy is that I really want to like some of their guys, but I don't know how to fucking account for Adam Gase. And like, it's going to be the story as long as Adam Gase is a coach in the NFL. But like, Sam Darnold showed some flashes last year, and he showed those flashes against bad defenses. I know because I streamed him for a while when he had that run against it was like Raiders, Dolphins, Giants, Skins, Dolphins again. And I was just like, Sam Darnold, baby, like, let's go. He's got a ton of potential. He's got some weapons in this offense, but it's really just difficult to really project it. And also last year, the offensive line was fucking terrible. According to Football Outsiders rankings for, adjusted line yards created, which is sort of their rushing stat, they were 31st in the league in that. And then they were 30th in the league in adjusted sack rate. It's always hard to quantify offensive lines, but I think it's pretty safe to say that the Jets offensive line fucking sucked last year.
Yeah.
On the bright side, they did a lot to sort of change it. They drafted Mekhi Becton, the gigantic offensive tackle out of Louisville, with the 11th overall pick. They signed George Fant, another tackle from Seattle. They signed Connor McGovern at center, who was another big contract they gave out to. He was with Denver last year. And they also, made a couple other signings on the offensive line sort of to add depth pieces. So they're trying. But in an abbreviated offseason, is the offensive line – do you think, it can't get any worse, but offensive line is it's a thing that takes a while to come together, should we be worried again that Darnold's just going to have no time this year?
Yes and no. I would still stream him against bad defenses, but I'm not expecting them to take a massive leap forward, especially with this kind of unknown offseason deal where they're not going to be able to get any kind of synergy going up until, I guess, whenever training camp starts. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with you that they are trying. And it will be they're like when you were saying all the names, I'm like, they really are trying. Yeah. Which is weird for the Jets, because normally they're just like, fuck it. If this was the Jets of 5 years ago, they'd be like, pick up Frank Gore, but that would be it. They also they picked up Frank Gore, but it would have been no offensive line moves.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm really interested to see the Mekhi Becton, the guy from Louisville, because he was the third tackle off the board, which was a little bit surprising. A lot of people had him as the fourth. But his whole thing is that he's fucking 6'8" and 380 pounds and moves like a fucking linebacker. So he has all the potential in the world to just be maybe the best tackle of all time. But also people are if he washes out of the league in 3 years, I wouldn't be too surprised, because it's hard for 6'8", 380-pound people to succeed. So I'm really interested. Yeah, I'm really interested in that whole experiment. And I think just with the glee that I get from the Jets playing poorly, it could be really funny in some cases. But we'll see how it goes. In terms of Darnold's actual draft position, QB 27, 218th overall, not a guy that you need to worry about outside of streaming or super flex or two quarterback leagues. And actually, while you talk about him briefly, and your thoughts on that position or whether you'd like him any better, I want to look up their early schedule just to see if he's a guy worth drafting late, like to stream for the first couple weeks.
All right, yeah. Sam Darnold is a guy, like you sort of said it before, like a guy like we like and has shown flashes, but really hasn't been able to string it together, and that's mainly because of the Jets organization, I think. So we might not ever find out if this guy is good or not, but he's, again, theme of the Jets right now. He's definitely trying. So
yeah,
it's rough for him to get anything going. They change the offense every single year. They have different coaches every single year. So the personnel is constantly changing. It's just rough on him. And the best opportunities for him are against bad teams, and that's when we should exploit it fantasy-wise.
He's got a bit of a tough schedule. That was why I let out like that Yelp.
It's like Patriots.
Starts the season just Bills and Niners right off the bat.
Oh, he's dead.
So do not draft Sam Darnold no matter what.
He's dead. Oh, my God.
I was looking around for like a stretch like he had last year where you could sort of use him. And it's really not even there, unless defenses go very much differently than we expect them to, which is always possible. Defense has a lot of variance involved in it, and year to year it can absolutely change. So, don't take any of this as gospel. But there's like a 2-week stretch where he gets Dolphins and Raiders, and what we'll talk about in next podcast, like the Dolphins secondary might be good this year. So so it's, his schedule is super fucked, basically. And I don't think he's going to be much of a fantasy asset this year.
Damn. Wow.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to do a lot of gambling right now. Jets win total under.
Yeah, the schedule's tough. And I mean, if you buy that the Dolphins can be at least mildly competitive, it's a tough division for them too.
This could be a year where the Jets might not win a game, or at least Gase is fired by like week 5 or 6.
That would be nice. I would enjoy that if Adam Gase gets fired. You never wish for people to get fired, but like fuck Adam Gase. Anyway, let's talk about the pass catchers because they're a little bit interesting, or at least some of them are. The big changes in the pass catching core for the offseason. So obviously Robbie Anderson, he's out. He is in Carolina now. He's an intriguing option there. He's a guy who's shown flashes, never really put it all together for a complete season. But I think a guy that we as a podcast sort of agree is talented and good and we like. Am I off on that?
No, I think you're right. I was just about to say, like, that pretty much described their entire wide receiver core. Has never been able to, like, maintain it for a full season. All have shown flashes and are, pretty good. But together, maybe something clicks, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I mean, talking about the guys they actually do have, Jamison Crowder actually didn't have a bad year last year. He finished wide receiver 35, so low wide receiver 3, 12.4 PPR points per game. And he's currently going as wide receiver 45 this year, 113th overall.
I love that.
He can definitely outperform it, but I've also been calling a Jamison Crowder breakout season for what feels like my entire life. And
that's also a good point.
maybe he's just this, maybe he's just low wide receiver 3. I don't know, and particularly in the Adam Gase offense, but anytime a guy's going to get 122 targets and you can get him which is what he got last year. I'm not saying that's what he's going to get this year, but you know what? Fuck it. That is what he's going to get this year. If he stays healthy, he's going to get 120 targets, and that's worth. Yeah.
I was going to say when Crowder and Darnold were both healthy and going, it was over 8 targets a game for Crowder. So if you can get that at this price anytime when we're actually drafting, that's fucking insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, at the very worst, he becomes a guy that you can plug into your lineup and be like, well, he's not going to get me 2,
Exactly. He'll get you 5 or 18.
Yeah. So there's value in that. And then the other 2 receivers that we would project will start for the Jets, and this could be wrong with one of them, but Rashad Perryman and Denzel Mims. Perryman obviously coming over from Tampa Bay, and coming over to start. We discussed it before. He kind of did jack shit until Godwin and Evans were both hurt, at which point he went the fuck off last year. And he showed some flashes with the Browns the year before that. I could see him filling into the deep threat role for the Jets pretty well. There's a very real question is how much is that deep threat role worth?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like completely worthless.
So is it worth wide receiver 59, pick 158 of the draft?
Whatever. No.
Okay.
I mean, probably not. I'd rather take Dawson Knox.
That's a bold call. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not advocating going after Rashad Perryman because I'm not really advocating going after anyone in this offense like too hard, other than guys who are very obvious values like Crowder. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like there's a chance he has a decent season. And then the other guy that we project to start, and part of me was like, oh, maybe like the abbreviated offseason, some of their bench depth or something will start over them. And then I looked at their bench depth and I was like, Josh Doxson and Josh Malone are not going to start over Denzel Mims. So Denzel Mims, the rookie out of Baylor, set 27th pick in the second round. A guy that dropped, though, a guy that, my scouting ability is next to none. But when I watched his, highlights from Baylor, I was like, oh, that's A.J. Green. I was like, this guy's tall and he's fast and he's, a good deep threat. And, he's a guy who can just be, a wide receiver one, That I don't know. I really, really liked him. I thought he dropped. I thought he has the chance to be really good. That being said, in this season, in this offense, count me out on him.
Yeah, I can very much agree with that. It's just, we don't even want part of veterans who have been in this system and have been with Sam Darnold, other than Crowder, and then you're not really going to risk it on a rookie in a weird offseason. Even though he's starting, it's just too much of an unknown. Yeah,
I mean, we'll see. He might be. I'm sure. If you tell me in week 7 Denzel Mims is a must-have waiver pickup or whatever, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was actually going to follow it up with if he pulls a Terry McLaurin. Okay, I'll eat my words on that, but it's probably very unlikely.
Yeah, and I mean, he's currently going for perspective, 167th overall, wide receiver 61. So not much behind Perryman. And if he's a guy you like, if he has a good preseason and you're like, hey, I want to take a late-round flyer on him, for sure, dude, I'm not going to stop you. It's fine to do that. But not a guy, again, that I'm actively targeting at this time. Sam Darnold's tight ends. We saw Ryan Griffin be weirdly really good in certain stretches of the season last year.
So strange.
Bizarre. Not a guy who's getting drafted right now because you would assume Chris Herndon, who it was a lost season for Chris Herndon after a rookie season that was actually really good. There's a reason we liked Chris Herndon so much last year, even though he had the suspension, and it was because he was historically great as a rookie when rookie tight ends are normally bad. So he's currently going off the board, tight end 20, 165th overall. I'm willing to take the risk at that price just based on Herndon, but I'm also willing to drop him like a sack of fucking bricks if he doesn't produce right away.
Yeah, this is my whole tight end argument. It's almost weird. I don't want to say wasting time, but it's just all right, take who you want at the end of the draft and then deal with it as the season goes.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it all fares, but do you think it's more likely that Herndon returns to his rookie year form and builds on that? Or do you think there's a chance that he's just not an Adam Gase guy or whatever? Because that's another thing. He came back and he was active, but he didn't play ahead of Ryan Griffin. And we were all kind of what the fuck? He might still be hurt. But maybe Adam Gase just fucking hates him for some reason.
I do remember that stretch of we're all right, pick up Herndon and wait for this week. It's 2 weeks ahead. And it's a Chris Herndon week. And then Adam Gase just I'm a total douche. And he's active, but you don't expect him to play. It's well, what? Why? What is that? So, it's weird to see. Well, not weird to see. It's very telling of Adam Gase to have that kind of talent on your team and then kind of waste it. And then, of course, Chris Herndon gets hurt again, and then just done with the season. Very, very lost season. So,
yeah. Speaking of wasted talent, great transition to Le'Veon Bell.
Adam Gase strikes again.
Thanks for setting me up for that one. I appreciate it. So Bell currently, so he signed that big contract last year. Apparently Gase was not a fan of that. They fired the GM before the season started who signed him to it. It's just like, what a fuck it. The Jets are a mess. But he's going as RB17, 34th overall, which is something we'll talk about in trends. RBs are going so fast this year. If you look at ADPs, it is wild. Like RB17, 34th overall. That's like insane.
Running backs are back right now. So
yeah, for real. He finished as RB18 last year with 14.3 points per game, but he did it on just like a humongous amount of volume. He was legit bad last year. He averaged 3.2 yards per carry, only 7 yards per reception, got in the end zone a total of 4 times overall, not even close to 1,000-yard rushing season. And I watched like a video breakdown of Le'Veon Bell's use with the Steelers and then the schemes that they had him running with the Jets. And I don't specifically remember the names, and this is not my strong suit. But basically, they were running him in a scheme that's not suited to him. Like, is that going to change this year? I fucking doubt it.
I was going to say probably not. Like, I feel like Adam Gase was like, all right, we'll give you your, whatever you want, your 20 carries, but they're all just going to be dives, and no one is going to do any kind of counter blocking or any kind of like interesting play type whatsoever. And just Bell really, really suffered.
Yeah, I mean, the 78 targets kept him afloat in terms of being a fantasy asset. But, yeah, it's difficult to see him, really breaking out in that kind of way unless the coaching staff changes its ways, and I'm not confident in them to do that. I think some more evidence that they're not necessarily wanting to have Le'Veon Bell on the field all the time is, drafting LaMichael Pirine, the 4th-round rookie from Florida, as well as signing Frank Gore. Frank Gore's a million years old and all of that, but you sign him because you're going to play him. And
he's going to get touches.
Yeah, and I would expect Pirine to mix in a little bit as well. So, I mean, they also still have guys like Trenton Cannon and Kenneth Dixon and Josh Adams on the roster, which all of those guys have seen flashes of production in the NFL at times. So it's a crowded backfield. Do you have any interest in drafting like Gore or Pirine or
no? I want to love Le'Veon because I do love him as a player, but it's just like nothing is appealing about this offense. Offensive line's rough. Adam Gase, untrustable as they come. And it's just really depressing to see one of the best players in the NFL just be like subject to this.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked before about how they're trying to make the offensive line better. They have made effort into that sort of thing. So maybe that gels partway through the year and Le'Veon gets a little bit of open space to run. I don't know, but I'm not really banking on it. So, yeah.
I know ADPs are a little out of whack and haven't really settled yet, but who is going around Bell right now? That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, let's pull some of that up. Do you want to grab that?
I'm trying right now.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the defense. So the defense for the Jets were 10th overall last year in Football Outsiders DVOA, but I think that's a little misleading because they were 2nd in rushing and 18th in passing. This is not a good passing defense, and they haven't really done much to improve that. They drafted the safety Ashton Davis out of Cal with the 4th pick in the 3rd round, and they signed cornerback Pierre Desir from Indianapolis. But a Greg Williams defense in general tries to do 2 things, and that's stop the run and not give up the big play, which leaves the middle of the field completely open. So I would expect this defense, again, to not be spectacular. And I would expect in terms of fantasy outlooks against the Jets, look for guys who run across the middle of the field, run those intermediate routes, and you should see some sort of success there. Were you able to find the range of running backs around Bell?
Okay, so right ahead of him are Austin Eckler, Leonard Fournette, then it's Bell. And this is all late second, creeping into the fourth. So right after Bell, it's like Chris Carson, Kenyon Drake, Devin Singletary, who we just talked about, Melvin Gordon, and James Conner. Also Mark Ingram right after that.
James Conner is that far down?
Yes, he is. I guess people are scared of like the injury proneness and the kind of unknown if Ben's going to be like what he was. But yeah, it's a very interesting shake there. And I feel like when running backs going so early, as you said before, it's going to be all preference, I think, in these like late rounds, which is going to be really tough in the offseason to kind of sift through. I feel like the late second and then to like the fifth or sixth is going to be so hard.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like when I was like 34th, like overall Le'Veon Bell, I was like, yeah, that seems early. But like reading out those running backs, it's not.
Nope.
It's about right. And if anything, he might be a little bit low. Is that like Leonard Fournette going ahead of him? Like, I don't know. I mean, it's early, obviously. There's a lot of things that'll change. But
honestly, I think Bell is going to fall even further. Like there's going to be hype between like Kenyon Drake is going to pass him. Singletary is going to get hyped up. I wouldn't be surprised if fucking CEH is going to like skyrocket as well. So
yeah.
It's going to be a really rough middle patch. I think that happened last year too. It's going to be a lot of preference and a lot of like team building, which is going to be tough to like suggest strategies, but fuck, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, there you go. I guess that does it for the Jets. Do you have anything else on them that you want to bring up?
Nah, definitely whatever their win total is, take the under.
Right.
Actually, I wonder what that is. We'll figure that out. But
the win total? It's 7.
7?
Yeah.
I love free money. 7 games. Wow. I thought it was going to be like 5.5. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, it's 7. They have
here.
The Dolphins have a lower win total than the Jets, which I looked at and was like, that's wrong.
All right, so I'll parlay that with – all right, Jets under
the Dolphins.
Miami. I'll go over on that. All right, cool. Free money, guys.
Just do the whole AFC East. Actually, yeah, do the whole AFC East parlay. Bills over, Patriots under, Jets under, Miami over. It's easy.
How does that not hit? I'm going to take out $1,000.
All right, guys. We'll be back with part 2 of the AFC East, which if you know the teams in the divisions and you know how to do basic math, you will know that that will include the New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins. Thank you guys for joining us. I know it's very early in June. I know there's a lot going on in the world, but we appreciate you giving us your time. And, for Vinny, I am Walsh. Later, podcast.
All right. You want me to stop this one, send it to Shrek, and then –
No, we can probably just keep it all going, right? I think that's what we did last year.
I can pause. Okay. Now we're good.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I am your host tonight. My name is Nick Walsh, and I am here with the one, the only – oh, wait, no, that's wrong. That's the wrong introduction. I'm here with Vinny Gonzalez. Vinny, how's it going, dude?
Fuck, man. You can't lead with, like, a tease of Don and then it's me. No one is going to be pumped about that.
Yeah, no, you're right. I fucked that up. You want to, like, lead with, like, the what is it? Under promise, over deliver. There we go. Yeah, my brain couldn't think of it for a second, but you nailed it. And I did the opposite. So you're welcome, listeners. It's just me and Vinny again. There you go. But we are here for part 2 of the AFC East preview. So that's going to be the New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins. If you did not hear part 1, make sure to check it out on the podcast app of your choosing. That will be the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. And while the Jets may not have a ton of fun to offer, I think the Bills is a fun discussion and a fun team. So we're going to get into, I guess, some interesting things with these teams because, we were just discussing before hitting record on this. The Patriots are just an absolute enigma of a team, and we don't really know what to think of them. And Miami is a team that, was very bad last year, but also got really fun towards the end of the year. and now made what I think are a ton of good moves. So I'm interested in Miami. I'm interested in New England, and I think it's going to be a very, fantasy or not fantasy, I think it's going to be a very interesting year in the AFC East. So let's just jump right in. Do you got anything to add before we go for it?
No, man, let's do it.
Fuck yeah. All right. New England Patriots coaching staff has not changed. Offensive coordinator is still Josh McDaniels. Bill Belichick and his son Steve are obviously there. So this is the team that won the division last year, 2019 record of 12-4. And now the over-under for their 2020 win total is 9.5 points. And that's with losing Tom Brady, which is bizarre to me. I don't know about you, but Jared Stidham, Brian Hoyer, Brian Lewerke, and Jamar Smith, those last two are undrafted free agents, I believe. That's the quarterback room. They had Cody Kessler in there for a little while. He's gone. But, I mean, like, are we giving Belichick too much credit?
Dude, I'm going to say this so much. I don't fucking know. I think he deserves all the credit that he's given, but to have that win total designated by Vegas, that with these two, like Brian fucking Hoyer and Jarrett Stidham, like it's really, I have no fucking idea what to think. Their defense is fucking great, but can they even get like an ounce of Tom Brady out of either of these guys to make them at least like game manager-esque, to stay in these games, to stay competitive, and then to win over 9 games? That's going to be a really impressive feat, I think, for either of these guys. Because, I mean, it's obviously going to be Hoyer or Stidham outside of like a Cam signing or something like that. So maybe they're banking on that secretly happening, and then everyone's under is fucked. So who knows? Because they still could add people, even though they haven't done it now. But right now, what we're sitting and looking at is mind-blowing.
Yeah, and let's talk about that defense real quick, because it was a very dominant defense last year. It was the number 1 defense by Football Outsiders DVOA, number 1 in pass defense, number 6 in rush defense. So just all in all, very, very dominant. In terms of the secondary, they didn't really lose anyone. The big contributors they lost up front were Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins, and Danny Shelton. But they did make some moves to sort of try and, replace those players. So I'm not looking at that as a major downgrade in personnel, but let's talk about defense in general. Last year, the Patriots had a fucking easy schedule. At the point in the year when the Patriots defense was like, you would trade like a wide receiver 3 for like straight up for the Patriots defense, they had been just like rocking easy teams and putting them into the ground every week. They had a pretty easy schedule last year. I don't think that necessarily is going to benefit them as much this year with like we talked about, the division has gotten better. And I don't know if like it's that much better, but the division is not as bad as it was last year, I don't think. Another point just in general with defensive stats and defensive rankings and defensive dominance is not as sticky year to year as offenses. And intuitively, this makes sense, right? Because a defense is based on 11 guys coming together, executing the scheme correctly, the scheme being good, and the players being talented. And offense is much more driven by one person being the quarterback. And, obviously there are a lot of different factors that go into that. But just in general, there is no player on the defense that has the same amount of value year over year as the quarterback on the offense. So just naturally, a defense is going to be a little bit more inconsistent from year to year based on injuries, scheme change, player change, just natural regression, those sorts of things. And one more point I want to bring up is the turnover differential. And don't quote me on the exact number, but I believe the turnover differential for the Patriots last year was plus 21. So they had 21 more turnovers than they forced 21 more turnovers than they committed. That's also a stat that doesn't necessarily stick year over year and is likely to have some sort of regression. And I don't think it's going to regress to where they're minus 21, but Jared Stidham's going to throw a couple picks because he's a second-year quarterback, and the defense isn't going to be as prolific as it is last year. or as it was last year. And I think the defense doesn't have to go from being like the best defense in the league to being to being a bad defense in order for this team to win less than 9.5 games. It just has to go from being the best defense in the league to be like the 8th best defense in the league. And all of a sudden you're sitting at 7 wins or 6 wins or whatever it is. And like that seems kind of likely to me. So I don't know. I don't know if you have opinions on that, but that was sort of my rant on this defense.
No, that was very well said, dude, because as an owner of the Patriots defense in our main league, I was badgered all season for trade offers. I'm like, how the fuck am I going to trade this defense to you for anything I'm getting back? Like, I need something of value, and you are getting a defense. Like, it just none of it ever made sense. And then I think people put a lot of value in it when it's really matchup based, and we really don't know what defense is good until the season starts. Like you said, 12 different dudes got to work together. Totally different than offense. Obviously, it's defense. And then how many times have we fucking seen people overdraft defenses? Every single year we say, do not do it. You just pick up a good matchup and then kind of hope they stick. That happened with the Patriots, and then all of a sudden people are thinking like, what a godsend. I can't wait to do this next year again. No. It doesn't work like that. You find as the season gets closer, you have a much better idea of who's going to be good, who's going to be bad. You project it out a little bit, maybe a couple weeks. You take that team very late. You do not overdraft defense. You do not take them anywhere before the 10th round. Don't even touch it. And it's just there's so much differential that happens fantasy-wise with defenses. It's absolutely insane. So be very careful with that.
Yeah, and this is that's a great point in terms of like actually playing defenses. Like, you know, you can look at the Patriots defense and be like, I want to draft them, you know, in the 8th round or whatever. But the Patriots weren't expected to be this defense last year.
Exactly.
I had them in one league and dropped them after week 2 because I was like, I'm streaming defenses and they have a bad matchup in week 3. And like, obviously that was fucking stupid in retrospect and didn't work. But like, defense is not predictable. The top defense drafted like 3 years ago was the Rams. Like last year it was like the Bears were the defense that everyone was like, The Bears are the best defense in the league. And with the same thing, like I said, is possible with the Patriots. The Bears defense wasn't bad this past year, but instead of being the overwhelmingly best defense in the league, it was like the 6th or 7th best defense. And that's a huge difference in terms of like the quality of one, the defensive fantasy production, and also just the overall effect on the team, you know? So the moral of this story is bet the under, I guess. but that's where we're kind of at. So with that rant and diatribe and tangent out of the way, let's talk about Jarrett Stidham. He's going as quarterback 32. Do you have any sort of idea how to project Jarrett Stidham? I'm guessing the answer is no.
Absolutely not. Anyone that does is fucking like an insane person. You cannot prepare for this whatsoever. And then if by some weird move that they just start Brian Hoyer, how could you be excited about that offense? You can't. So Stidham is applying that like unknown factor where it's just like, oh, that could be sweet. He'll dump it off to Edelman a bunch. He'll get a bunch of targets. That's like my best guess. And it's not a good guess because I don't know anything about Stidham. Does anybody really know a lot about Stidham?
The Patriots are comfortable with him, apparently. That's about all I got.
Oh, my God.
But you mentioned Edelman, so let's go right to him because he's the one guy on this offense that I think might actually be a little bit undervalued this year. Edelman last year finished wide receiver 9, and that's in PPR points per game. That's not in overall points. Sorry, I should have mentioned that at the top of the other one. These last year's statistics that I pulled were in points per game and PPR points per game, and the sample size was players with 8 or more games played. So that's where those numbers are from in case you check like fucking whatever source you use and tell me Julian Edelman was wide receiver 12. It's like, shut the fuck up. He was wide receiver 9, giving the metric that I'm using. He's currently going off the board wide receiver 31, 73rd overall. I know Brady to Stidham is a huge downgrade, and I know Brady and Edelman had really, really great chemistry. Stidham, you would think, would want a security blanket like Julian Edelman, particularly given the talent and experience of the rest of his pass catchers. To me, Julian Edelman's, we said Jamison Crowder's a lock for 120 targets. Julian Edelman's a lock for what, 140, 150?
Yeah, I would say so. And like that's the way the Patriots run their system. Like they do a lot of intermediate, over the middle, short stuff. Like an outside guy hasn't really been relevant in some time for like the wide receiver position there. And I think Edelman's, like you said, he'll be the rock for the offense. It's, easier targets down there. And it just seems like the one logical thing I can draw from that is just like Edelman will be there. Edelman will get it done. And is being undervalued.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. The other wide receivers that are, within, I think, the realm of like potential starters are N'Keal Harry, the second round draft pick from last year. He started off the year injured and just kind of never got off the ground after that. You have Mohamed Sanu, who was traded for midseason, had like one big game, and that was kind of it. And then they signed Damiere Byrd, who was one of the outside wide receivers for the Cardinals last year. Didn't really do a ton for them, but was on the field a lot. I don't expect him to start over either Harry or Sanu. So I think, the general choice will be the receiving core is going to be Edelman, Harry, and Sanu. N'Keal Harry's going wide receiver 62. Mohamed Sanu is going wide receiver 82. Are you interested in either of them?
That's confusing to me, though. I feel like it should be swapped. Like, how many times have the Patriots drafted a wide receiver and it just never fucking pans out ever?
I guess, but I mean, Harry's a guy who a lot of people liked, and he was derailed due to injury last year, so I'm kind of willing to write off his rookie year. I think he's a guy that they would want to really give a chance to see if he can do something this year. So I'm with that order. I'm with Harry being the guy to go after over Sanu, just because I think we know what Mohamed Sanu is.
I like Mohamed Sanu, though. And they did trade a second-round pick for him, and he was injured at the time, too, with like that nagging ankle thing, which got taken care of in the offseason, should be healthy now. So that was definitely painting him. I think he was just gutting it out to see if, they can get it done for the playoff stretch, try to get to the Super Bowl. But if Sanu is healthy, I'll take a healthy Sanu over N'Keal Harry any day. So if he's going later, I'll throw a dart on him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to change my opinion based on what you said, but what you're saying makes complete sense. And I think it's okay to fall on either side of that coin. You're right. He was traded for a second-round draft pick. He is a guy who has had some success in the past. And if he becomes the primary outside guy, then there's a chance that he can be a guy that you can plug into your lineup some weeks, and he's completely free at this point. So
also, you could draft him as a flyer, and then all of a sudden they have him starting at fucking quarterback. You plug him in your wide receiver. It's fucking all set. And how do you not see that, Walsh? It's perfect.
You cracked the code, dude. You figured it out. Mohamed Sanu, New England Patriots starting quarterback.
Total lock.
That's honestly if I'm Josh McDaniels, I'm definitely drawing up some weird packages now.
Could you imagine they come out remember when they got fucked up by the Dolphins all those years ago by the Wildcat? And that's all they run this year. It's just Wildcat with Mohamed Sanu. Stidham's always out left.
I would suck Bill Belichick's dick. That's that would be the funniest thing to ever happen in the NFL.
They win 3 games and all they run is Wildcat.
Oh man.
God damn.
Well, I think that'll do it for the wide receivers. If Mohamed Sanu becomes a Wildcat quarterback this year, just remember Vinny called it on June 4th. It is the 4th, right? Or the 3rd? I don't know.
4th.
It's the 4th. All right. Vinny called it on June 4th. Let's move to the other pass catchers, specifically the tight ends. For years and years and years, the whole thing was, Tom Brady loves the tight ends. The Patriots love throwing to the tight ends. Wrong. The Patriots love throwing to Rob Gronkowski and other talented tight ends. The Patriots had the fewest amount of targets to tight ends in the NFL last year. So Belichick is smart. Everyone should have seen this coming. Belichick is smart. He's going to tailor his scheme to his personnel. We've seen years where they've been a run-first team. We've seen years where they've been a pass-first team. Belichick is smart. He's going to figure this out, which is making me upset that we just told everyone to bet the under. But anyway.
He won't figure it out that much.
Okay, yeah, he won't figure it out to the tune of over 9.5 wins. That sounds good to me. So anyway, in the tight end room, we have Matt Lacoste, the second-year player, and then they drafted 2 tight ends, and this is interesting because they actually traded up for both of the tight ends. So first we have Devin Asiasi, who is a third-rounder. He was the 27th pick in the third round out of UCLA. He's a guy who – can play inline tight end. He can be split out wide. He can play from the slot. He's a little bit versatile. Just a guy who you would think they would try and plug in and use in as much ways as possible right off the bat. The other tight end that they traded up for was Dalton Keene, who went the 37th pick in the third round out of Virginia Tech. And he is more of an H-back prototype. And that's not a position that the Patriots have really featured in the past. When they've had the 2 tight end sets, it's been sort of like an inline guy and a move guy. It seems like right now they're kind of going for a different archetype, and Josh McDaniels might be changing his scheme a little bit. But Dalton Keene kind of profiles, or at least what he played in college, was more of like a Kyle Juszczyk role, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So I don't know if any of that is fucking fantasy relevant, even a little bit.
Probably not, but very interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at. In terms of guys getting drafted, I said to Vinny I was only going to include the top 300 draft picks in ADP in this, but Devin Asiasi was number 301, so I figured we might mention him. He's going off the board at tight end 37. So, no one is really looking at this as a fantasy relevant situation. I think if anyone is going to emerge, it'll be Devin Asiasi. But again, rookie tight ends rarely emerge as fantasy relevant, and the quarterback is not proven. And there's also 2 other tight ends on the roster. So don't bank on it.
Yeah, I got nothing.
All right. Let's move right on to running backs, where they're bringing the band back in terms of the running backs, all 5 of them. Sony Michel, James White, Rex Burkhead, Brandon Bolden, who generally plays special teams other than when he vultures a touchdown randomly, which is always very funny. And then the second-year player, Damian Harris. Currently, Michel and White are getting drafted around the same time, RB 32 and 33 respectively. And then Damian Harris is getting drafted as running back 69. Nice. Mm-hmm. Burkhead not being drafted, which I was going to say is interesting, but I don't think it actually is.
Yeah, I don't think so. As long as James White is alive, and playing, Rex Burkhead, I think, is kind of a non-factor.
Yeah. So given the Stidham situation, do you have confidence in any of these running backs?
Not at all. We tried to predict very stupidly last year that Sony Michel would be a concrete pick. The Patriots will finally get their shit together, have a good running back that you can depend on in fantasy, and it was just a total, kind of clusterfuck. Something we should have saw coming, but I think, especially me in the offseason, I was like I usually stay away from Patriot running backs, but just Michel just seemed more appealing. I don't even know why, because nothing really changed. They still have a massive backfield. But I just feel like it's the same case now. Michel is a solid football player, and they will use him as such on the team.
Yeah, drafting Michel last year, which I also did, and I bought into the hype a little bit, was absolutely the dark helmet, fooled you moment where, it's you're just
bad.
Fuck, I should have known. How did I get this stupid?
Yeah, it's I've always said fuck that, and I tricked myself in 3 leagues. I'm just why are you an idiot?
It's like Rodgers saying to wait on defense every year and then drafting the first defense in the 11th round. That's what we did with Sony Michel this past year. And even this year, I'm trying to reason my way through Patriots running backs. And part of me is the quarterback sucks. They're going to want to, or the quarterback, I don't want to say sucks. I don't know if he sucks. The quarterback situation is unknown. they're going to want to run the ball a lot. Sony Michel might be a good value based on that. The offensive line isn't bad. Like, cool. Also, like, they might not be that good of a team. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. James White is a great, like, receiving valve out of the backfield. Like, I can make that argument as well. And both of those are completely hypothetical, and I have no idea which one is more realistic.
And what sucks is they're right next to each other. That's how much no one knows. Like, it's just like creeped up to that point. It's just like, I don't know what to do right now. So, yeah. I mean, those points are all really valid. And I think the way the Patriots play is like pretty much in line with that. If it's a good matchup for the rushing attack, they're going to run Michel 20 times. If the defense has trouble stopping pass-catching running backs, James White game. So if you take one of these guys, you're going to have to take that into account and when you're playing your matchups. But, like, they can obviously just have a bum game and the Patriots fuck you some other way. It's very hard to trust anyone on this team. And especially with all the unknowns, no Brady, there's no, even with Brady, it was very hard to do. So now that they have not a Hall of Fame quarterback, it is very, very difficult to gauge any of this offense.
Yeah, 100%. I think, if you're looking for safety, James White is definitely the one who offers more of that. And I think Sony Michel offers upside. No, I think James White offers the floor. I think Sony Michel offers the upside. If this defense is elite again and Jared Stidham is good to, somewhere from like average to like very good, then like Sony Michel offers the kind of ceiling in the sense of Mark Ingram ceiling,
Okay.
But that I don't think that's the likeliest outcome at all. I think the likeliest outcome is the defense regresses and Jarrett Stidham is whatever, and everyone kind of like Sony Michel ends up pretty much worthless, and James White becomes a low-end RB2 flex option.
Which, not to discredit James White, I think that's what we kind of did now, but he's been great, for many years. And it's just kind of, you got to not pick and choose because it's really tough to do that with James White. But, like, when you need him and you plug him in, I feel like very rarely he lets you down, I guess. Like you said, I think you're right. With the floor. So that was a good point. With Michel, I feel like he has a baseline floor, but that's it. His floor is his ceiling.
But I mean, I don't know.
It's so tough, man.
I think the lesson with these Patriots right now is Julian Edelman is probably undervalued. You're not wrong for trying to throw a dart at one of the other outside wide receivers and just probably like stay away from the running backs for the most part.
I would say if like you're panicking and you're in the mid rounds, I guess grab like one of them.
Oh, dude, either one of those guys is absolutely a pick that you're going to make panicked and then later on be like, fuck. Like, I
have to play him every fucking week.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute. Sony Michel is my RB2? Are you fucking serious? But anyway, you got anything else on the Patriots?
Nah. Under.
All right.
Under.
Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back with the Miami Dolphins.
We're going.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen, and we got one more team in the AFC East. Yeah, AFC East to cover for you, and that's the Miami Dolphins. So the Miami Dolphins in 2019 were absolute garbage for a lot of the year, and then towards the stretch run got kind of a good schedule. Actually got a really good schedule, and got pretty fun. Ryan Fitzpatrick started slinging the ball around. Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki were just catching touchdowns, and they finished the season 5-11. Their 2020 win total is now 6. Seems a little low to me. Again, we've alluded to this before, but that's where we're at right now. Even with that fun finishing stretch, the team was one of the worst in the league in terms of total DVOA by Football Outsiders. They were 32nd out of 32 teams. Their overall offense was 27 and overall defense was 32nd. So pretty bad. Now, in terms of changes that the Dolphins have made, head coach is still Brian Flores. That's good, I think. I liked him.
Yeah, I did too.
they've changed both the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator. And I think this might have gone underreported because I didn't realize it until a couple days ago. But the Dolphins brought in Chan Gailey, and Chan Gailey hasn't coached in a couple of years. He's been out of the league for a couple of years. But the last time we saw Chan Gailey was like the heyday of the Fred Jackson, CJ Spiller split in Buffalo, which was really great. He's known for sort of playing to his players' strengths. He likes a spread offense, and he requires an athletic offensive line in order to make all of that work. Another thing is that Fitzpatrick has clearly had success under Chan Gailey, both in Buffalo as well as the offensive coordinator for the Jets when Fitzpatrick was there. So I'm cautiously optimistic about that. I mean, Chan Gailey is always a guy who I've looked at as a boon to good players' fantasy production. So that's pretty interesting to me. And then on the defensive side, they brought in Josh Boyer, who was their defensive backs coach last year. I believe he is now the defensive coordinator. And before that, he spent a long time as a defensive backs coach in the Patriots organization. So another person from the Belichick coaching tree. And we'll get into that a little bit with one of the signings that they made and how they can use him. But let's start off, I guess, at the quarterback position where the big news was Tua Tagovailoa, fifth overall pick, obviously a guy who is extremely, extremely talented, has shown it throughout his college career, but has also dealt with a lot of injuries. I think the expectation here is that he won't start the year, but also that he will see the field at some point. He will probably take over for Ryan Fitzpatrick at some point during the season. Both of these guys are going late, quarterback 27 for Tua, ahead of Fitzpatrick at quarterback 29. What do you think about the quarterback room here, which also still includes Josh Rosen?
Poor guy. I feel bad for Josh Rosen.
He just got saddled behind like the two worst offensive lines in the NFL for the first 2 years of his career, and now everyone's like, this guy fucking sucks. And it's like, yeah, he's a stone-footed pocket passer who you put behind the two worst offensive lines.
They got a fucking break, man. Yeah, I don't like the Rosen bashing. Like it's tough. Like, come on.
Yeah. He got fucked.
Big time. Watch the Patriots just like, hey, we'll take you. And then right to the Super Bowl. But besides the point, I like them. I really like what they're doing here. I think they're handling it correctly. They're not going to force Tua out too early. I feel like it's going to be like what happened with the Redskins. Like it's kind of going to be like last year with Dwayne Haskins, like a no choice kind of thing. Like, all right. What were we even talking about? Like, get him in there. But it's a little different because the injury history and whatnot, that huge hip injury before the draft and all that. So it will be Fitz most likely starting, which like isn't a bad thing. Fitz is fun. Fitz will sling it, and he'll probably keep the offense afloat if you draft any of these guys and are playing them early in the season, much like Parker, possibly Preston Williams. So I like that shit a lot. And once Tua gets in there, I feel like he's going to have a very positive effect on the team. Is it going to take a little bit? Perhaps, sure. Everyone has growing pains, but I like Tua a lot, big fan, and I think that he'll bring life to the team. I really do think that.
Yeah, and I mean, I brought it up before, but like Fitzpatrick has worked with Gailey in the past. So even though it's an abbreviated offseason and, they need to install a new offense, we're looking at a coach and a player that have done well together, that have had success together despite the limitations of Fitzpatrick as a quarterback. So, I mean, I haven't looked at their early season yet, but should Fitzpatrick be in the streamer conversation? Absolutely, like 100%. So
who do they open the season at?
Let's take a quick look.
Because that would be very ideal.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely wait real hard on that, but I do think, as I said before, that Tua will take over the job during the season, and Tua is also a quarterback that I have a lot of confidence in. And again, not like I'm a scout of any renown or that kind of. Oh, they opened the season against the Patriots and then the Bills, but Tua is a guy that I think minus the injuries, would have been up there with Burrows for the number with Burrow. I always say Burrows and it's Burrow. It's not.
I never correct you either because I like it.
Yeah, I feel like his name should be Burrows, right? But anyway, maybe it shouldn't. I don't know. I'm dumb as shit. But the point is, I think Tua is extremely talented, and I think he is a legitimate quarterback of the future for this team. And I also think that, Gailey will build the offense around something where Fitzpatrick and Tua can both potentially succeed in it. So I'm pretty optimistic about this offense. I feel pretty good about it. I think whichever quarterback is in, they are immediately in the streamer conversation depending on the matchup. And yeah, that's kind of where I am on the quarterback room.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the pass catchers in this offense, and we'll start at wide receiver with Devontae Parker, who just got fucking paid. I think last year was the year where everyone pretty much gave up on Devontae Parker. Since he got drafted as a first-round pick, we've all had these expectations of him that he was going to evolve into some sort of wide receiver that could be counted on, was going to become an elite wide receiver. And I think last year everyone was like, fuck it, it's done. And then he broke out. But the thing is, he didn't break out until the second half of the season. And I think this is falsely being attributed to Preston Williams going out and getting hurt, whereas it should be attributed to math. And I'm going to go on a minor rant here.
All right, I'll sit back for this one.
All right. Sorry, the page that I needed to reference fucking went like 404 error on me.
No.
But here's the point without the exact numbers while I wait for this to maybe reload. Devontae Parker was a guy who was getting a ton of air yards throughout the first half of the season, and he was a guy that the math would have said that he would, regress in that situation where he was not producing early in the season despite his high amount of air yards. But as the season went on, he should have started to catch a couple more of those deep balls. And I think this is the thing that's, again, not realized with Devontae Parker, the same way that it was not realized with our friend Stephon Diggs that we talked about in the last podcast. Devontae Parker's average depth of target, and I'm sorry, I still don't have the correct thing up. I thought I did. Devontae Parker's, now I have it up. His average depth of target was, where the fuck are you? I am so sorry. I'm blowing this.
I'm going to guess 18.6.
No, it was 13.9 yards.
So close.
Which was in the top 20 among the league. So Devontae Parker, during the first half of the season, was used as a deep threat who it wasn't being connected with. During the second half of the season, he was obviously used a little bit more intermediate and underneath with the absence of Preston Williams. But the math said that Devontae Parker should have broken out towards the end of the season, and then he did. You can look to other guys like Mike Williams, who did this same sort of thing, broke out towards the end of the season after being very irrelevant for a lot of the season. And it was just that he kept getting the same sort of opportunities, but he started converting them. So Devontae Parker, I'm very interested in this year because I don't know whether he's going to be used as a deep threat in this Changeli offense or whether he's going to be used differently. And I think it makes his range of outcomes very, very wide and very interesting. But I do think he remains a pretty good value sitting at wide receiver 25 right now.
Very good points, Walsh. Only thing is looking at like the Dolphins schedule right now, and like we were talking about before with the Patriots defense, very hard to gauge which defenses are going to be good or continue being good. But matchup-wise, cornerback matchups for Devontae Parker suck.
Yeah, I mean, Stephon Gilmore, Trey White.
Oh, my God, dude. He even goes to fucking San Fran for Sherman. He'll be at the Rams for Ram. Oh, my God, dude. This is – and then Patrick Peterson.
Chargers, Broncos.
It's just you might be waiting for another second half kind of deal. But is this one of those cases where it's like this offense will be fun and trying to throw it a lot because they might be down in certain situations with Tua. Like it all depends when that quarterback switch happens. But Fitz is no stranger to throwing it into a fucking packed ass like little tight window. So it might be kind of one of those things where you don't want to fear the schedule too much and kind of take the opportunity on them more so than look at that.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about wanting to bet the over on the win total, but the win total is 6, which means we expect the Dolphins to be losing most games, which means we expect them to be playing from behind for most games. So that's going to lead to volume in the passing game, right? I mean, yep. Devontae Parker had 128 targets last year, and he's getting drafted as wide receiver 25. He was really good last year. I know Preston Williams is coming back, and he didn't break out until after Preston Williams got hurt. But Devontae Parker really showed something, and he got paid like he showed something. Obviously, the organization believes in him. And yeah, I think that's some fucking value for Devontae Parker.
I feel like he's in that middle, also in the probably in the fantasy community where people had so much faith in him for so long and just gave up on him. And then there's that small few that picked him up and played him and are like, all right, I'll draft this guy again. So now his little niche is very minimalized. So I think the believers and hype pieces might be a little, far and few between. So I think you're making a great point. I feel like that it's a huge value, and I think the offense is going to be, fun and exciting.
Yeah. And he, I think we're going to be overall a very pro Devontae Parker podcast because we know Don loves him too. But yeah,
Don is that person I was just talking about in that little target market area where it's just that guy saved Don's ass. Don owes him. So Don is going to draft him in the 4th round. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, going further from Parker, we have Preston Williams, who we were talking about. Undrafted rookie free agent last year from Colorado State, just really came in and immediately became sort of the alpha in that short to intermediate passing game for the Dolphins. Finished as, and this, I think in my brain, and I think in a lot of people's brains, Preston Williams had a better season than he actually did. And it might have been because he was sort of rolling into stride as he got hurt. But during the actual season, and this is by points per game with wide receivers with at least 8 games played, wide receiver 43, 11.4 PPR points per game. So not anything crazy, but I think that perception does get a little bit warped because he was kind of ascending as the season went on. The game he got hurt in, he had already scored 2 touchdowns. And if he had stayed in and scored another touchdown, I might have won a ton of money. And I'm not bitter about it at all because I definitely didn't stack Ryan Fitzpatrick and Preston Williams and go out to a huge lead in a bunch of GPPs on DraftKings. But
I think about that every time I see his name.
Yeah, just me complaining to you because he already had 2 touchdowns and then he got hurt in the beginning of the 3rd quarter.
Yeah, you're a few $100 and he's hurt or he stays healthy and a couple $1,000.
Yeah, that was the thing. I still had a really good weekend that weekend, and it's he hadn't gotten hurt, it could have just been exponentially better. But anyway,
his stigma also too, when the season started. It was such a bandwagon of hate on the Dolphins, just we're never playing a single fucking guy on this offense. And then slowly this guy just kept scoring in that 9-point range. And you're just well, he's not going to fuck you. And they are going to throw a lot because they're always down. And they just got, trashed for the majority of the first half of the season. And then right, like you were saying, right as he peaked, got hurt, and then probably could have had just as good as a fallout for the season as Devontae Parker did, but, unfortunate, just happened to get hurt.
Yeah, so I think he's a guy at wide receiver 51 currently where, no matter what, you're getting value there, I think. And it just seems like a no-brainer type pick. Again, I think just looking at all of this, I'm higher on the Dolphins than people are. But, that is what it is. In terms of the rest of the wide receivers, they still have Albert Wilson, who is going off the board at wide receiver 86. He's a guy who's been, very frequently injured, but has a lot of big play potential. Jakeem Grant falls in that same category. And then they still have Alan Hearns. I think the reason that we need to bring these guys up is that Changeli, and, I don't want to make too many assumptions about Changeli's offense in that he's been out of the league for several years, but he historically has spread the ball out. So we're going to have a lot of wide receivers on the field. And he's also historically liked these little gadget players. So guys like Wilson and Grant might have some sort of intrigue. Do you want to draft any of them, or it's just fire? Or
I'm out on that, because we've been trying the Albert Wilson thing for quite some time, and maybe he pulls a Devontae Parker on us, but I don't see that really happening with his skill set. So I'm gonna probably just stay away from that one.
I think that's correct. I think the right move is to target Parker and Williams, and then kind of
call it quits there.
Yeah, figure it out from there. If someone else emerges, then good for them. Mm-hmm. At the tight end position, Mike Gesicki really broke out toward the end of last year, and he's a guy that we had sort of been waiting for it with, where very athletic, and it kind of all came to fruition as he got through the end of last year. He's currently going off the board. Tight end 14, 126th overall. We mentioned him on on part 1 of the AFC East podcast. The one thing I'm afraid of is Changeli has never historically featured a tight end. That being said, he's known for playing to his players' strengths. And you would think one of the strengths on this team is the fact that you have a 6'6", 250-pound tight end who's athletic as all get out, who can go up the seam or, post up in the end zone or do whatever is needed there. So I think I'm pretty in on Gesicki this year. Where do you stand on him?
I have no argument one way or the other. I'm really having a tight end crisis. Last year officially broke my fucking brain. It was, if you were scoring over 5 points, half PPR, you were a startable tight end. So me placing any sort of value or thought that I did the last couple of years for tight ends has always been completely wasted. So I'm having a really hard time getting into any sort of valuing of tight ends. And I said it a little bit on the last podcast, but I don't give a fuck. Do whatever you want. The people are going to draft George Kittle, Kelsey, all early. That's fine. If you want to get cute with it in the middle, sure. I'm all about the later guys. Mike Gesicki falls in that. If he falls to me and I'm wrapping up my team, why the fuck not?
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I do want to bring up some stats for Gesicki from last year. And again, a lot of this is without Preston Williams, but I don't think that should factor too much into it. But so from weeks 9 to week 17, Mike Gesicki only had one game with less than 6 targets. In that game, he had 5 targets. So we're not looking like a crazy drop. I mean, it was a bad game. He had 1 catch for 6 yards, but we're not looking at a crazy drop in terms of his actual targets in terms of any of that point. Also within that stretch, again, weeks 9 through 17, Mike Gesicki had 5 touchdowns, and he had 3 games where he had 50 or more yards receiving. So not terribly impressive, but also my point for tight ends is normally if you can get me 6 targets a game, fuck it, I'll play you. And that's what his minimum was 6, except for that 1 week where he got 5. And the best week of the season that he had, week 16, 12 targets, 6 catches, 82 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's a startable tight end right now, and he's going off the board at tight end 14.
Yep. That's why it's just it's such a hard thing to grasp when people are going early on tight ends, because there is so much value that late.
Yeah, and Gesicki's definitely one of the ones to target. I think he's one of the ones to go after, and I'm sure as the offseason goes on, we'll go into this in more detail. But
absolutely,
be prepared for this to be the first out of about 7,000 times that we talk about Mike Gesicki this offseason. So, all right, let's jump into the running back situation. And then after that, we can touch offensive line and defense, because I think both of those are pretty important here. But the running back situation last year for the Dolphins was fucking dire, and it was bad. It was bad to the point that I was touting Patrick Laird. Rodgers was touting like fucking Kalen Ballage at like different points of the year.
Don't forget about Miles the Fridge Gaskin.
That is a joke that like me and maybe 4 other people will get. And man, what a great joke it is. Miles the Fridge Gaskin. Fuck me. All right. So a lot of that, I think, though, is because the offensive line was fucking terrible. Within Football Outsiders stats, they were ranked last in rushing in terms of an offensive line, 28th in passing. You weren't dealing with much talent, but it is telling that Kenyon Drake was doing jack shit with the Dolphins and then went to Arizona and scored 4 touchdowns in a week to knock me out of the playoffs in a league. So
there you go. Thanks, Chase.
Yeah, there's that. So at the running back position this year, they're looking at a combination of Jordan Howard, brought in from the Eagles, and Matt Breida, brought in from the 49ers. And I mentioned Changeli before with the Fred Jackson, CJ Spiller situation, where both of those guys were top 20 running backs in the same year. Do you think there's any chance these guys can end up as both legitimate fantasy contributors? They're going off the board running back 38 and 40 right now.
They're cheap as fuck, and I would be all about that, especially if I'm loading, wide receiver early or trying to like pad the middle of like the middle rounds with any sort of running back depth. You're getting I would assume Jordan Howard would probably be the starter. I would think.
I mean, starter, early downs, goal line,
yeah.
Breida third down, 2-minute drill passing situations, right?
Yeah. Quick side, I feel so bad for Jordan Howard. I feel like he's like the Brandon Cooks of running backs. Like, it's just you've been passed around from team to team. You've kind of had like no problem being good, but not really being excellent either. And you're just
he's never done anything wrong.
Everyone's like, and like we're just like, he'll catch a bunch of passes this year, and then like he doesn't. We're just like, that guy fucking sucks. It's like, he's a really good running back. Dude's getting like 1,000 yards every season. Relax.
He scored 3 touchdowns in that Thursday night game against the Packers this past year.
Yeah, man, he's fucking elite. But yeah, I completely want to be able to see it. I find that it's difficult to take a team that's like so new. Like, it is like this is a brand new Dolphins team, so it's going to be difficult to gauge how they're going to use the running game. But like, as you allude to with Changeli, like, it's entirely possible. It's just going to be hard to sift out. I would be fine if you're taking these guys so late. They can like hang out on your bench, and you have time to see what the fuck is going on. So I have no problem with that, depending on like how the offseason bumps these guys up ADP wise. But it'll be very interesting. The one thing is, I don't know where the passing work would go. Jordan Howard, we always wanted it to be. It never was.
It's going to Breida.
And it'll probably go to Breida. Can we bank on that, though? I don't know. Probably not, because the other guys, like, even I was going to say Ballage has been there, but he's terrible.
Dude, but Kalen Ballage, Myles Gaskin, and Patrick Laird, like,
irrelevant,
can go out the window in terms of this discussion. Like, they're not seeing the field because they brought in 2 actually good running backs, and good in their roles. But
agreed.
I don't know. I think Braid is a guy who's been very underrated. He's a guy who can catch passes. I'm pretty excited for Breida this year, and I think out of the 2 of them, despite the fact that Howard is probably the nominal starter and is also going a little bit ahead, I think Breida is going to have the better year. Again, the reason I say that is the win total 6. You would think they're going to be playing from behind more often than they're playing from in front. Therefore, I want the pass-catching running back ahead of the goal line and rushing running back. But that's sort of the reasoning there. I really do think both of these guys can be usable, though. And I think a big reason for that, and we talked about it before, it's going to be hard for new offensive lines to sort of convalesce early in this year. But the Dolphins, they had this terrible offensive line. They did basically everything they can to retool it. They brought in Eric Flowers to play guard, who was terrible as a tackle for the Giants, was I think like a 7th overall pick and just an awful, awful tackle for the Giants for several years. But really actually played pretty well as a guard last year in Washington, signed a big contract with the Dolphins. They brought in Ted Karras to play center. They drafted Austin Jackson, who's viewed as a developmental tackle, but they drafted him with the 18th pick in the first round. That's a guy they're going to be starting. And then with the 7th pick in the second round, they took Robert Hunt, who had played both guard and tackle in college. And, I don't know where exactly he's going to line up on this line. But another thing, how we talked about the Jets in the last podcast, where the line was terrible and at least they tried. The Dolphins are trying here,
They also are.
They didn't just sit back and say this line is okay. They tried to completely retool their offensive line, and it can't be any worse than it was last year. So if it can get to maybe like a middle-of-the-pack offensive line by the time we're looking at midseason, I think both Breda and Howard could be legitimate threats and legitimate fantasy starters.
I also had to double-check this. They're both 25 years old. So, they're coming into, prime time. So there's no reason we can't expect these guys to be at their best still. So I think that's a vote of confidence towards both of them.
Yeah, 100%. Count us in on both of them potentially being values. We'll see how the offseason shakes out. But as of June 4th, I think we're both getting a little pumped on the Dolphins running backs.
Yeah, it's June 4th. We've said nothing wrong. Everything we've said is totally right about all these teams.
Let's talk a little bit about the Dolphins defense, because last year they ranked 32nd in Football Outsiders DVOA in defense. Another situation where they did not sit back and do nothing. They signed Byron Jones to a big money contract. Byron Jones is a big physical guy, athletic. They still have Xavier Howard, who last year, kind of fell off the map, but the year before was looked at as an up-and-coming shutdown cornerback, another guy who is big and athletic. They drafted Noah, and I'm going to fuck up this name. They drafted Noah Igbenogany.
Works for me.
I think it's right. I could be wrong.
Oh, I think you nailed it.
With the 30th pick in the first round, they had 3 first-round picks. They drafted him out of Auburn. He is also a big physical guy. So they're obviously looking for an archetype in this secondary, and I think they're building the team similar to the Patriots have, where they're building off the secondary being dominant rather than the pass rush being dominant. And, I'm sure some of that comes from Josh Boyer, their defensive coordinator, is a former Patriots coach.
Brian Flores.
Brian Flores, former Patriots coach. Is he? Maybe I just said that.
Former defensive coordinator for them.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, brain stopped working for a second. And then speaking of former Patriots, they brought in Kyle Van Noy, who is sort of like a unique, weird player that you need to know how to use. But if anyone is going to know how to use him, it's Brian Flores and Josh Boyer, because they've fucking coached him. So exactly. That should work. They also brought in Shaq Lawson and Emmanuel Ogbah on the defensive line. These are not spectacular guys, but guys who are solid pass rushers, guys who are going to improve this defense. So the Dolphins really did a lot this offseason, I think, to make themselves a bit better at defense, to really improve the offense in almost every capacity. When I look at off seasons for teams, I feel like the Dolphins almost did the most to improve out of any team in the NFL. But
how could they not, with all the draft capital they had, all the cap room? They've been preparing for this draft for the last 3 years. So
and it's also easy to make that jump when you are one of the worst teams in the league
for a while, a couple of years in a row. So it's unlike I would say probably the Browns. They're handling this very well. Like, they're finally getting shit done.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see if that translates into wins in 2020 or if it, translates into just being kind of fun some of the time in 2020. But either way, I'm excited to watch it. I think Vinny's excited to watch it. Mm-hmm. Before we let everyone go, Vin, you got anything else?
No, this is fun. It's great.
Yeah.
It's always great to be back. I love it.
Yeah, it's great to be back. It's great to be previewing divisions. What was the one that I set up for next week? Was it the NFC North?
Let me give it a check real quick.
Yeah.
Fuck,
well, man. I mean, we'll be back with 2 podcasts a week for the foreseeable future, going through the entire off season. And then, of course, during the regular season, we'll be back with the recaps and the previews. But yeah,
it was NFC North.
NFC North. So next week we'll be back with the NFC North. I don't have any guarantee of who's going to be on it, but there's a decent chance it will be one or both of us. And we couldn't be more excited to be back with you guys. So for Vinny, I am Walsh. Later, podcast.
This has been Let's Talk Fantasy Football. Thanks for listening.